Hello, my friends. Thanks for opening. As we move toward the close of our solar year on December 21st, I want to talk again about karma and what it is. So, for those of you who haven't been following me, karma is energetic patterns that are created through circumstances, through our choices of what to think and what to believe, especially if we repeat patterns of thoughts, emotions, and belief. These actually form energetic patterns because remember, matter accumulates where there is a continued focus. So we create these, and these form our identity. Our identity, some of these patterns are carried from lifetime to lifetime. And because we created them, when we have emotional, spiritual, mental maturity, we can change them. So let's talk about how we change karmic patterns. Well, one of the ways to change the energy of a pattern that you're carrying within you is through looking at whether it's there because you blame somebody for having harmed you. And we can get stuck in blame and resentment. But the great antidote to that, as we all know, is forgiveness. So if we forgive each other and also forgive ourselves, that dissolves bothersome karma. Now, there's good karma, bad karma, and neutral karma. Today, we're just going to be pretty much addressing the karma that's a problem for us. All right. I guess I should give you an example of karmas. Good karma for me is my absolute passion about nature, my love of nature, my wanting to be outside. Neutral karma is I like things clean and tidy and beautiful. That's just kind of neutral, it's just working with this density. And my bad karma, or the karma that has handicapped me, has been primarily in relationships with animals, relationships with my family. And those are the ones, as I age, I really strive to find a resolution for. So when I got over blaming my parents, friends, circumstances, events in my life, when I got over that, I dissolved those resentments by being willing to forgive. And sometimes only being willing is as far as you can get. Some of you know that I use a mala. It's a lot like a rosary, but really any beaded necklace would work too. And I repeat, I forgive such and such for such and such. And I just, like every morning, I do a little bit of forgiveness practice as part of my spiritual practice to either forgive somebody else or be willing to forgive myself for how I acted out of trauma, how I acted out of misconceptions, and self-forgiveness is a wonderful thing to strive for too. As we age, we begin to assimilate because I've lived the bulk of my life, let's face it, there's a lot more in the past than there is in the future. And basically, I don't want my past to come into my future. We all think that when we die everything's going to be great. And yeah, it's easier because we're not in this density, but there's an incredible continuity between our prior life experience, identity, and story, and the way we can create in a different experience platform. It's a continuity. It's not like, poof, everything is wonderful. We still have to deal with our karma because our identity goes with us without the physical body. So when things have been difficult for us, and in this density, of course, things are difficult for us here. There's the first thing that we do, we tend to blame when we're emotionally immature and form resentments. Okay. So there's that level of coping with events that caused us to create more troublesome energetic patterns. Let's phrase it that way. But then at some point, we begin to take self responsibility. Self responsibility is posing the question to yourself: what part did I play in this troublesome karma? Or less than, well, I always say, if you can look at something that you're kind of not proud of in your life, you probably had something to do with that. So if you take a real clear-eyed look at what you had to do with the creation of energetic patterns within you that hamstring you, that are unpleasant, that are not healed within you, the best way to approach that is to forgive yourself for your part in that. Now, when we look at events or occurrences or things we've done in life, especially from a vantage point of 70 something years, and we look back, we feel two things. We feel shame. We might feel shame, and we might feel grief. And I think those two are sort of on the same level too. But my guides and angels gave me an insight the other night. They often wake me up at night and show me something else, that below the grief and the shame, which we don't want to feel, it's unpleasant. That is hiding sorrow, because there's sorrow underneath the guilt and the shame. Small examples. I have a lot of sorrow that my mother and I never connected. We were like two ships passing in the night. I have tremendous sorrow that I didn't understand my father's trying to help me, and he did try to help me when I was a child. I had a severe trauma when I was 14 that took away my confidence and gave me a tremendous fear of people. And then acting out of that trauma, I made some bad choices. I left my family very early, irrevocably. And, so when you get to be my age and you look at the shifts and the turns, even though I know on looking back that if some of these things hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. So there's perfection in that plan too. But there was also difficulty and suffering in the outworking of the story of who I'm expressing in this lifetime, right? So with that ocean of sorrow, My guide invited me not to avoid it, but to, and also not to dwell in it. It's kind of a two-sided thing. When I could think of times that would bring sorrow up, to feel the sorrow and then let some of it go. And the way I visualized this was a bathtub. So when I looked at, um, like my mother and me, and the sorrow that I'm carrying about that, I guess I could use a lighter example. I have a lot of grief about my brother suffering toward the end of his life. And I need to feel that sorrow and go into it, and open the drain a little bit and try and drain that out. Now, the reason to do that is because we don't want to take the sorrow with us as we're dying. If we don't have a way of doing the self-examination and reaching peace with what has happened in our life, we can become terribly haunted toward the end of our life by what happens. So, sharing this with you, I hope, is helpful so that we don't have to avoid the feeling of shame, understanding that there's grief right next to it, understanding that this is the shell that's preventing us from going further into the center of ourselves, where we can continue to change the energy of our karma and make room for love within our heart where there has been lots of sorrow. I just want to give you another real quick example of this, which might illustrate it better. I've been with horses pretty much all my life. I've only not been with horses the last 3 years. When I was young, I tended to, well, I was keeping horses in not the best of circumstances, although for them, they loved it. They were hardy ponies, but I didn't have a fancy barn. I didn't have, they were never starved or anything or without water, but I wish I had better circumstances for them to live in. And I had to make decisions about their lives. And now I understand that horses have friends. When horses are moved around, it's incredibly traumatic to them. I didn't know that then. I did the best I could for the horses all along, but I wish I could have done better. And that is a source of grief to me. I really think most of my guilt is animal guilt. So, this was the way that my guides showed me, so that I don't carry an enormous amount of guilt into my continuity of other experience platforms with me. They've told me that my horses all loved me, that they understood that I did the best I could, and they had moments of joy, and we had moments of joy together. And in end of life review, when I'm out of a body, that's what I will learn. But while I'm still here, I have a lot of regret around horses. And so I'm going to be working on draining that bathtub for a while. I hope that this gives you another tool so that, we're Forgiveness is a phenomenal tool, but we have to drain the sorrow of our grief and our guilt and our shame also in order to move forward in joy and light. All right. Thank you so much for considering the thoughts that I offer. Take it until I see you again. Please be well and please be blessed. Thanks for coming.